With 16 mainline games and hundreds of additional properties, including sequels, spin-offs, DLC, novels, audio dramas, and even kabuki theatre adaptations, Final Fantasy has had no shortage of stories to tell. And those stories have contained some of the most iconic characters in video gaming history. The likes of Cloud, Squall, Lightning, and most recently Noctis and Clive have earned their place in the hearts of so many fans, and it's easy to understand why. These characters are often dark and brooding loners or rebels. They have a degree of moral complexity, and they have a tendency to run away from a tragic past, all while battling their inner demons. And in the case of the aforementioned heroes, learning to trust their newfound friends is usually a major part of their character arc. We clearly love rooting for an underdog, and given the often cosmic level disasters that befall the worlds of Final Fantasy games, nearly everyone is an underdog, regardless of their background. That's not to say that the likes of Cloud, Lightning, and Clive are all the same. Their circumstances vary wildly, and it goes to show how creative each story and world is, as they're able to each feel unique. But they do contrast rather starkly with perhaps one of the most beloved Final Fantasy characters of all time, Yuna from Final Fantasy X. The heavy use of Japanese folklore and spiritualism in this particular game laid the groundwork for a very different type of hero. And despite being one of the most popular characters, Yuna has frequently been misunderstood. She is commonly criticised for having a muted personality, her questionable decision-making, her general naivety, and her physical frailty. But while fans can, of course, feel however they want, Yuna is a far more complicated character than she's often given credit for. And while she may not be the brooding warrior with a giant sword, she's equally imposing in her own right, and just as rebellious, if not more so, than the others. To truly understand Yuna as a character, it's first important to contextualize her through the lens of traditional Japanese folklore, social customs, and societal values. Final Fantasy developers have often merged Eastern and Western elements to craft worlds that feel familiar, regardless of how far they opted to push in any particular direction. Final Fantasy VII serves as a great example of this, as the visuals are heavily inspired by Western architecture and fashion, while still containing an Eastern-inspired nation in Wutai. What made Final Fantasy X unique, though, was that the Asian influence was far more prominent compared to previous games. Yoshinori Kitase, who oversaw the creation of Final Fantasy X, even said, "Since each installment from Final Fantasy VII, VIII, and on were depicting an increasingly Western and futuristic world, Kazushige Nojima, the scenario writer, suggested for us to illustrate a world that had a stronger Asian flavour with our new title. The idea to create a fantasy world based on cultures and customs familiar to us felt really new at the time, and I do believe that we succeeded in doing so." Taking a step back and relating this again to Final Fantasy VII, while Yuffie and her homeworld of Wutai did exist in that world, she was considered a foreigner within the context of the game's setting and timeline. But nearly all of Spira was influenced by Asian design, from its architecture to its fashion, and even the flowing calligraphy-style text that could be seen throughout the world. And this philosophy also manifested through Yuna in a way that had never been seen before. Her clothing, for example, resembled a kimono, and even her role as a summoner was expanded upon as a way of tying it back to traditional Eastern religions. Yevon's rituals and practices were, for example, inspired by Shintoism, Buddhism, and Hinduism. As a summoner, Yuna was effectively a Miko, a Shinto shrine maiden, a type of priestess tasked with bridging the communication between humans and the divine. Throughout her journey, this meant Yuna was required to perform rituals in the wake of Sin's destruction to purify the lands, and she also underwent trials at temples to gain the blessings of the faith so as to then be able to summon Aeons. But to understand the characterization of Yuna in a fuller sense, we need to step away from the world of Spira for a bit to go into some real-life history around Japan. In sociology, societies can be organized in several ways, but the two that are relevant are collectivist societies and individualistic ones. Collectivist societies discourage pursuits of individual attention, happiness, or success if it's at the cost of group harmony and peace. This is in contrast to individualistic societies, where individual success is prioritized, even at the cost of others. The nail that sticks out gets hammered down, versus the squeaky wheel gets the grease. Broadly speaking, the Western world are considered individualistic societies, while the East Asian countries tend to be collectivist ones. And this is certainly true of Japan, where the ethos is very collectivist, an attitude that stemmed from a historical reliance on community and a general distrust of outsiders. This was largely due to being an island country that chose to isolate itself during the Edo period. During this time, Japan limited external influences, which then fostered a society focused on social harmony and strict adherence to hierarchical roles. The social structure of the time emphasized conformity and loyalty to the community. While Confucian teachings had been introduced to Japan centuries before the Edo period, they saw a rapid spread during that time. And an important concept within Confucianism was filial piety, respect, and reverence for one's family and ancestors. Much of the folklore created during this period stressed the importance of sacrifice and duty, often emphasizing loyalty. The historical events turned legend of the 47 Ronin avenging their slain master comes to mind. Another common theme in Japanese folklore was duty versus emotion, with emotions being the adversary to one's duty. The Japanese word gaman describes the ability to endure unbearable hardship or misfortune with patience and dignity. These societal values have persisted beyond the Edo period, laying the foundation for modern Japanese values that prioritize group harmony. All of this comes together to paint a portrait of a culture that deeply respects traditions, duty, family, sacrifice, and obligation. And these are then all very good ways of describing the characterization of Yuna. She is, in many ways, a hero cut from the traditional Japanese cloth. Her pilgrimage to defeat sin was of the highest importance, and she took on the role knowing full well that success was to come at the cost of her own life. This was, of course, the most extreme aspect of the role, but Yuna treated the other aspects with the utmost importance too, and they often took precedence over any of her own personal desires. Adding to this pressure was her family lineage. As the daughter of High Summoner Braska, the last summoner to defeat sin, the pressure of legacy and upholding her father's ultimate sacrifice was a major contributor in her choice to even become a summoner, and this was filial piety in its purest form. Her devotion to both Yevon and the citizens of Spira were part of the reason she also agreed to marry Seymour. In her mind, the union of two religious leaders, especially during a time of great turmoil, could unite the people and fix the rift that started to exist within Yevon. After all, a maester had been hastily replaced. They were forming strategic alliances with the Albed, and even the use of forbidden machina was being sanctioned. While Yuna also had pragmatic reasons for accepting the proposal, she was willing to follow through even if she did happen to find out even more uncomfortable truths about Seymour, because she hoped that she'll be able to try and contain him. The challenge was how to portray this strength on screen though. Yuna, as mentioned, has often been criticised for her muted personality, something that was emphasised by her initial physical frailty, and the way other characters like Lady Donna constantly belittled her due to her reliance on so many guardians. But it could be argued that this was due to the classic theme of duty versus emotion. Yuna was unwilling or unable to stand up to Lady Donna and fight back, and in Besaid, perhaps the ordeal was just far tougher than she expected, not that she would ever admit that. As mentioned, Gaman describes the ability to endure unbearable hardship with dignity, and if there was ever a poster child for facing the impossible with grace, it was Yuna. Spira's fate, her friends, family, everyone she had ever loved, everyone that currently existed, their hopes, their dreams, and their futures, they all rested on the shoulders of a 17-year-old girl. And this is further put into context when realizing that the other summoners, the likes of Donna and Isaru, they were 24 and 26 respectively, much more mature and more aware of what was going on. With how critically important Yevon was to Spiran culture, and how devout Yuna herself was to the religion, her decision to then ultimately go against Yevon and end the cycle of death was necessary, but no less radical of her. While the likes of Cloud or Clive screamed of rebellion from the very start, Yuna was quite the opposite. But she still brought down the very fabric of the culture Spira was built on, making her one of the most rebellious characters in the history of the franchise. And while this rebellion was more than warranted, she did so knowing that she was undoing a literal lifetime of values and beliefs, and she still nobly fought for the people, even though she knew the very systems they relied on were corrupt. And that requires some serious strength. At the centre of Yuna's character was someone who just wanted peace and happiness for others. No longer tied to religion that demanded needless sacrifice, she sought to give Spira the eternal calm it deserved. While she didn't lose her life in the way that she thought she would, Yuna still sacrificed her happiness for others. Not because she was told she had to, but because she felt it was the right thing to do based on her upbringing, and she was very stubborn in that endeavour. While there has been criticism of her characterization moving into Final Fantasy X-2, it's not surprising given the frankly earth-shattering revelation that she went through during the events of the previous game. Bringing down the religion that most of Spira followed, including herself, had more than earned her a change of clothes. Despite her new fashion sense though, she still remained the polite and optimistic character we knew from the original game, still wanting to bring joy and hope to those around her. And when considering these factors, Yuna really does stand as an extremely complex character, a modern folklore hero that was heavily influenced by Japanese and Eastern beliefs and traditions. And it's perhaps for that reason that amongst Japanese audiences, she is the most popular character from Final Fantasy X, and one of the most popular characters from across the entire franchise. With that though, we hope you've enjoyed this deeper look into Yuna, and what makes her stand out against the many other protagonists who have graced the series. It's just one example of why people love Final Fantasy X so much, as the entire cast and world have so much depth. Be sure to share in the comments though how much you appreciate Yuna as a character, and if you enjoyed this video, feel free to hit that like button and subscribe for more. Alright everyone, with that, this is Daryl signing out. As always, I'd like to give a big thank you to all of our Patreon and YouTube membership supporters, especially Benjamin Snow, Chris M. Walker, Christopher Gardner, Clever Chavez, EXP Required on YouTube, Gregory and Stephen, who are super special Onion Knight supporters, and of course a big thank you to everyone for watching this video. I'll see you all again soon for more Final Fantasy goodness.